We visited Arches National Park near Moab, Utah over 2 days in the summer of 2014. If you would like to get notices when I post again, be sure to subscribe right here. Just click on that button. This was designated a national monument in 1929. And then, in 1971, it was designated a national park. It covers a little over 120 square miles of desert area, and we'll be looking at the 2 days we were there. And now we arrive at Arches National Park to spend the rest of the afternoon. We'll be back here tomorrow to finish the park. You can see here that the park is not very far north of the Canyonlands National Park we've been in the last few days. And we'll be following this route, taking the main road all the way through till we get back to Devil's Garden, and we'll look around there and then look at the rest tomorrow. And just to remind you, Finn's calls these arches by eroding away, and they're constantly being renewed. Arches is up on top of a high mesa, and you can see up high where the cars are driving. We'll be climbing up on top of that mesa for several minutes as we drive up the road. And soon we come out on top of the mesa, and there's the Henry Mountains in the distance. We'll be passing through Park Avenue, an area of large towers of rocks. We'll be coming back here tomorrow. Deborah will be waiting in the car as I take the 5-mile-long Devil's Garden Trail to see the many arches in this area. As you can see, this trail goes through some very narrow areas between the rocks and is magnificent with all the different rock formations along it. Take a side trail to go see Tunnel Arch and the Pine Tree Arch. Then I return to the main trail and its spectacular views. Soon I arrive at one of the largest arches. You can put a football field underneath this. And in 1991, something spectacular happened. A 73-foot long slab weighing several tons fell off. As we say, this will eventually collapse and new ones are being formed. The area is only about 11 feet wide now, and you can see the rocks that fell off. And now we come to Partition Arch. As said earlier, arches are constantly being formed. You can see the small arch on the right-hand side of this one. And then we head to Navajo Arch. You can see how wide and thick it is, but eventually this one will fall also. Heading on down the trail, we will eventually come to the Double O Arch. Notice the little arch at the bottom of this arch, forming the two O's. And then looking past the Double O Arch, we see the Dark Angel, the end of the trail. The Dark Angel can be really dark or light on the face, depending upon how the sun is shining on it. And then it's time to head back. Along the way, I'll stop at Private Arch, which was found more recently. As I head back, a Great Basin gopher snake crosses the trail and goes into the weeds. Last on the list today is Broken Arch. As you can see, it's broken in the middle, but still standing up. Arches National Park for a second day. My camera kind of was messing up, so we didn't get as much of the park done yesterday as we had planned. But now we're going to head back up into the park and do the rest of it. As said before, Arches has dozens of named arches and hundreds more of unnamed arches. We were up in this area yesterday at the Devil's Garden looking around, and today we're going to be looking at the rest of the park. This is the route we'll be taking through the park. We'll drive directly to Delicate Arch and see it, come back to Wolf Ranch and then see the Sand Dune Arch and Fiery Furnace before heading to the Windows section, then go back to the Balanced Rock, see the Petrified Dunes, the Courthouse Towers, and Fifth Avenue before leaving and heading to Grand Junction. Our first stop will be Delicate Arch and walk its trail to its viewpoint. First, however, we have to climb back into the mountains and up on top of the mesa. Once on the mesa, we pass Fifth Avenue and the Courthouse Towers. We'll be back here later in the day. Crossing the mesa, we finally arrive at Delicate Arch Viewpoint Trail, and we're going to walk it for a little bit. There up on top of the hill to the very right, you'll be able to see Delicate Arch. They're kind of in the center now. Going to be walking up to it. This arch is 65 feet tall and one of the few freestanding arches. Most are attached to various fins, and it's made of Entrada sandstone. So let's head up. As we go, we'll be seeing many beautiful plants and flower this spring. As said before, this is one of the few freestanding arches, and you can get an idea of its size from the people around it. And now it's time to head back down. We're going to be seeing lots of green color in the mountains today. This forms when iron is underwater, as much of this was underwater when it was formed. And here you can see the various rocks and even plants growing in the rock. And all around us is the living soil that we saw earlier at other parks. It's now the time to leave Delicate Arch and move to Wolf Ranch. This ranch, as it was originally built, was a dirt floor cabin with a corral and not much else. It was settled in the late 1800s by John Wesley Wolf, who injured his leg in the Civil War, and later his daughter married a Mr. Turnbow, and his family moved in also. In 1906, they built a wood floor cabin to replace the original cabin. And this is the cabin we see here today. They only lived here about 25 years. But why did they settle here with all this dust around? Well, there was water, Salt Wash, which was a free-flowing stream that flowed year-round, gave them a source of water for their cattle, and grass enough to grow. And here we can again see some of the green from the iron. Now it's time to move from Wolf Ranch over to the Broken Arch and Sand Dune Arch and look at them. Look at stuff today, like for instance it said on the box you could actually walk. Some of these stone formations remind us of the Needles in the Needles section of Canyonlands we saw a few days ago. We now arrive at the trail and head to the Sand Dune Arch down a short trail through the black brush and grassland flat. We'll start seeing holes in the ground, and this is the only meat-eating rodent in North America, the grasshopper mouse. They eat darkling bugs and scorpions and have a eerie call.
She's a wolf in mouse clothing. The mouse's ghostly howl stakes claim to hectares of Sonoran Desert.
The Sand Dune Arch is labeled because you have to walk through the sand to get there, and it's fairly well concealed, but a beautiful trail along the way. Here we can start to see some of those fins. We're actually walking between some of them that eventually form the arches. As you can see here, them shelving off. And then we arrive at the arch. It's not as spectacular as some of the others, only a few dozen feet high, but still fairly pretty. Here you can see the sandstone splitting off in layers as it cracks. Deborah will head back to the car, and I'll take the half-mile trail on over to Broken Arch. As you can see here, across the black brush and grassland flats. You can see here why they say stay on the trails. You can see how deeply it's worn compared to the rest of the flatlands here. some of the arches are very hard to see. Do you see this one right here? Because of the way the shadows, this is an arch right here, as you can see underneath it, but it looks like part of the rock. In the sand we can see where rabbits and grasshopper mice and birds and other animals have moved through this area. And now as we walk down the trail, we come to Broken Arch there at the end. It's not really broken, just has a crack. Everywhere you look as you walk out, you can see the magnificent scenery and the rock formations. No two rocks are the same. Now we're going to move down to the fiery furnace and look around there a while. The fiery furnace is an area that is very rugged. It has many fins running parallel to each other, and so it's hard to get around inside it. It didn't get its name because it's hot. It got its name because of the red color of the rocks, and when the sun sets, it looks like the whole thing is on fire. And the fins run from left to right here, and here we are at the end of those fins. As you can see, they start to erode away and break into small pieces at the ends. This is a restricted area, and only can go through it with ranger guided tours because of the ruggedness of the terrain. The rocks and sand are red because of the iron oxide in them. And here you can see as the fins break away, it goes to pretty flat lands. Now we're going to move down to the windows area and look around there some. But first we'll look back up from the fiery furnace from below and can see how it looks from there. Again, note that the fins run from left to right. And now we're going to drive past Balanced Rock. We'll be back here in just a few minutes and go to the windows area and look at it. This area has a large concentration of arches of all different sizes and descriptions, and it's a good place to see how arches form over time. The park is in constant transition, with new arches being formed and destroyed constantly with erosion. First, it starts off as the sandstone cracks deeply and forms what are called fins, and then these fins start eroding into caves and eventually go all the way through, and eventually they'll fall. Here you can see two arches, and here you can see two caves that are forming arches in the future. This area is called Cove of the Caves, and many arches are going to be formed here in the future. The park 100 years from now will look vastly different than it does today. Not only do we find arches, but other structures here that are formed by the erosion. We're going to be looking at three areas: Double Arch, the Windows Arch, and Turrets Arch as we go along. First, Double Arch. You really can't see it too well from here. From this angle, it looks like a single arch. But when you get to this angle, you can see there's another arch behind it, and you can see how huge this arch is with the people below it. We'll now be moving over to Windows Arch. It's a double window with a nose kind of in the middle. Here we can see the nose is blocking the south window, and we can only see the north window. If you look carefully, you can see the south window right over the nose. Looking through the north window, you can see Tourette's Arch in the distance. It's actually 3 arches, with a large one in the center and a small one on each side. And this is the end of this particular fin, as you can see. It then goes down into the blackgrass prairie land. As you can see, here's a small arch. Probably not going to make it. Looks like it's eroded through on top. And it's constantly changing here with these rock formations, and eventually it'll just fall apart and wash down into a flat prairie with no rocks here at all. This area is called the Parade of Elephants. And now it's time to head back to Balanced Rock and look at this structure. Balanced Rock has a total height of 128 feet, and the rock on top is 55 feet high and weighs 3,500 tons. And it too will eventually fall. As you can see, this pre-1975 picture of a smaller Balanced Rock, but it has fallen in the winter of 1975, and all that is left is a bunch of rubble. There are several different balanced rocks, and eventually they will all come down. And also in this area, an interesting thing is happening. A man is climbing one of the spires. And then it's time to head out over the prairie as we head from Balanced Rock down to the Petrified Dunes viewing area. The Petrified Dunes aren't really petrified, for they were never actually living things. They're just simply sand dunes, as you can see here, who have turned into sand. Now we move from the petrified sand dunes down to the courthouse tower viewpoint. As we pull in here, you can see the various rock formations that are in this area, and some people thought they looked like tall courthouses. And again, as things continue to change, at the end of this fin, you'll notice this gap that the road goes through. And because of the amount of debris, most people think that there was an arch here at one time that would have looked something like this, but now it is gone and fallen. It is the policy of the National Park Service to let erosion take its natural course, and if arches fall, then to let them fall. Now it's time to pull into the Park Avenue Trail area. I won't be walking very far down this trail, but a little bit to see it. The walk actually goes between two fins. As you can see, this fin that sticks out on this side and one on the other side. And there at the bottom is a trail that you can walk through this area and around to another parking lot on the other side. I'm just going to walk a little bit through it. There's some more balanced rocks. Wonder when they'll fall. You You see how red the sandstone is here as it weathers because of the iron oxide, and the view from inside the trail is beautiful. Now we drive on around, heading out of the park. About 6 million years ago, a tragic earthquake hit this area with devastating consequences. There was such a huge crack that the side we're on fell 2,600 feet in elevation, creating the valley that the road runs through today. Now it's time to wind our way back down off the mesa. As we get to the visitor center, you can see up there. And this brings us to the end of this video.